A grand jury in Virginia has indicted New York Attorney General Letitia James on bank fraud charges, following intense pressure from President Trump to have prosecutors bring that case. According to the indictment, James was charged with bank fraud and making false statements to a financial institution. The charges were presented by acting U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, Lindsay Halligan. You've heard her name a lot lately. It's because she also secured an indictment of former FBI Director James Comey just 2 weeks ago. Halligan was Trump's hand-picked choice to replace the previous head of that office, who resigned after the president threatened to fire him for resisting pressure to charge both of these individuals, Comey and James. Yesterday, Halligan presented the evidence against James alone, after a senior supervisor in her office indicated to colleagues they didn't see probable cause to seek this indictment against the New York Attorney General in the first place. Meantime, James's legal team said the indictment amounted to political retaliation against the New York AG, who last year secured a civil fraud verdict and nearly $500 million penalty against Donald Trump and the Trump Organization. James forcefully denied the charges against her in a video posted to social media.
These charges are baseless, and the president's own public statements make clear that his only goal is political retribution at any cost. The president's actions are a grave violation of our constitutional order and have drawn sharp criticism from members of both parties.
Okay, so what comes next here? James is due in court for her first appearance on October 24th. If convicted, she faces up to 30 years in prison and up to a $1 million fine on each count. There's a lot for us to break down here. It's why I'm glad we've got former U.S. Attorney and an MSNBC contributor, Barbara McQuade, with us. Barb, good morning. Just first, your reaction to this indictment, which I think many of us thought could come, but it's still stunning once it happens.
It really is, Allie. I mean, it's like deja vu from last week. We see Donald Trump demand that charges be filed. We know that his appointed U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia declined. He appoints Lindsay Halligan, and sure enough, she secures an indictment. And so, if Jim Comey had a selective prosecution claim, it seems like Letitia James has it now, not only with her own evidence, but his as well.
Once again, though, when you see that Halligan is presenting these cases by herself, that the reporting behind the scenes is that there are other prosecutors in the office who say, yeah, I'm not going to do this because I don't think we have enough here to actually do this charge and make this move in the first place. What does that continue to tell us about these prosecutions? Because that's got to get taken into consideration as well.
It's highly unusual. You know, there's nothing legally improper about the U.S. attorney herself taking the case herself to the grand jury or signing the indictment. But I will tell you, in almost 8 years as U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Michigan, I did that exactly 0 times because we had lawyers who were in the weeds about these cases, who would work them carefully, and were the ones who presented the case and signed the indictment. And so the fact that she's swooping in and doing this herself after a matter of days is really highly unusual, and I think does speak to the ethical obligations that those other lawyers are expressing here. There is an ethical duty for prosecutors under model rules of professional responsibility and DOJ policy to bring a case only if you believe that it has the sufficient evidence to go all the way to a conviction at trial.
I think the other thing that's looming over this, too, is the way that President Trump has been so brazen and public about pressuring his attorney general and her Department of Justice to seek charges like this. He specifically named Tish James and James Comey, as well as Adam Schiff, in a post where he directly addressed Pam. Presumably, that's the Attorney General, Pam Bondi. Now there's reporting that he meant to do that as a direct message, that he ultimately shrugged it off when they told him, you actually, sir, did that publicly. Does that change anything here? The fact that he was trying to do behind-the-scenes pressure as opposed to quite public pressure, it's kind of all the same.
It is all the same. Until recently, there was a policy of the Department of Justice that there be no communication between the White House and the Justice Department on case matters. That is to avoid not only interference from the White House, but also even the appearance that there was any sort of political motive behind charges. We've got the president speaking, whether it's publicly or privately, to the attorney general, directing her, demanding essentially that charges be filed. That just blows that norm out of the water. It was installed after Watergate to prevent the kinds of abuses that Richard Nixon was accused of engaging in.
Yeah, it's really, frankly, quite hard to imagine President Biden ever addressing any kind of social media post to just Merrick and asking him to do that. And we know the pains, to much criticism, frankly, that Garland's Department of Justice took to show no level of anything that could be construed as partisanship or impropriety. So as we look ahead here, for noting the fact that the landscape has significantly changed in regards to the way that DOJ is handling these very sensitive prosecutions in a highly political environment, we look ahead to October 24th when James's first court appearance is set for. What do you expect to happen then, but also between now and then?
Well, an arraignment is what will happen that day. It's not a particularly eventful day. Sometimes there is a preliminary trial date set, but those dates are usually made to be broken. I imagine that we will see some motions filed by the James defense team before that case actually goes to trial. Before then, if I read the tea leaves or even the Truth Social post, I'd be a little nervous if I were Adam Schiff. He's named in that one. But of course, there's a whole litany of Trump enemies that he's named. He's named Christopher Wray. He's named John Bolton. He's named any number of other, not only Democrats, but also members of his own Republican Party who did not play ball with him, that he considers to be, his enemies. So I think anybody on that list ought to be fearful that they may be next.
Yeah, John Brennan, Miles Taylor, just to add more names to those that you've already mentioned. And Senator Schiff, for his part, came out to talk to reporters yesterday and said, yeah, I'm very much aware that I have a reason to be looking out for something coming down the pike, but I'm not going to be deterred from doing my job. So I think there's clearly an awareness in the Senate and within the senator's office that he could have something potentially in the future. There's one more